Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm Nicole Blanchard. I'm the Outdoors and Environment Reporter for the Idaho Statesman. Today, we plan to talk about one of Boise's most beloved assets, our trail system. We have more than 200 miles of trails in and around Boise, and they have become more popular than ever as the state's population is growing. The pandemic sent even more people outdoors in the last year, and traffic on some routes in the foothills has doubled and tripled in recent years. All of that extra traffic has a lot of impacts on our trail system. On top of that, land in the foothills is in high demand by developers. So what does that mean for the future of the trails that all of us know and love? We will address, how will we address concerns about overcrowding and trail damage, all of these things that are coming up with traffic and development? And how will we ensure that different users like hikers, mountain bikers, and trail runners can all continue to enjoy these trails? We are fortunate today to have three experts who are going to be talking with us about what's next for hiking and biking in the foothills. David Gordon is the director of Ridge to Rivers, which manages the vast majority of Boise's trails. He has led Ridge to Rivers since 2003 and worked in trail and backcountry management for 35 years. Jamie Zalber is Boise Basin's ski director and also oversees trail maintenance, mountain bike operations, and other activities on the mountain. He is in charge of implementing the area's trail master plan. Carlos Matutes is the director of SWIMBA, the Southwest Idaho Mountain Bike Association. He works to make mountain biking accessible to people of all economic backgrounds, and SWIMBA helps build and improve trails around Boise. We have received quite a few questions already from Statesman readers, so we'll get started here and start getting you guys some answers. And please, if you're watching and you have questions, leave those in the comments of our live streams on the Statesman's Facebook and YouTube pages. We are monitoring them live, and we will try to include some of those questions in our conversation today too. So to start with, I'm going to jump in with some questions of my own and talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the trails in terms of use and what has changed in recent years. Just get a kind of overview of where things are at. So what sort of new things are you guys noticing? I'll go to David first. What new things are you noticing, and what are you hearing from trail users recently?
Just over the last year, the most notable thing is the increase in use. COVID played a large part in that last year, but also the increase in people that are moving to the Boise area. It's been acknowledged for years that the foothills and the trails in the foothills are a primary motivating reason for a lot of people in deciding to move to this area. So the use continues to increase, and with that is just when we hear from trail users, it's appreciation for what they can experience out there, and in terms of concern, just boy, there's a lot more users than there used to be, and is there anything you can do about that to try to to lessen the pain of that for longtime trail users?
Carlos, I see you kind of nodding your head. What has been your experience from a mountain biking perspective?
Well, I'd have to agree with the sheer volume increase that's happened, especially over the last 14 months. I've been in the Treasure Valley for about 9 years now, and just in that short time, I've noticed a huge increase in the number of trail users that we see out there. The last 14 months has really kind of given us good and bad in the increase in trails. We'd love to see new people out there. We'd love to see people who have never really experienced our foothills trails before being out there and just having a great time. It does lead to a lot of crowding and has led to a little bit of an increase in trail conflict that I've been hearing about.
Mm-hmm. And to take things over to Jamie, Boise Basin's trails are getting really popular as well. What's the background with, you guys getting into the trail business and summer offerings rather than skiing, and what are you seeing there?
Sure. I think our past trail usage has been, people just coming to the mountain in the summertime and utilizing the trails that have been here, mainly multi-use trails. In partnership with Ridge to Rivers, we've built and maintained trails on the mountain over the years. And since 2016, we've started to implement our trails master plan, which includes kicking off our mountain bike park. And to second what both David and Carlos are saying, over this last summer, we saw a huge increase in both paid and non-paid trail users here at the mountain. And as we build trails and implement our master plan here, we get feedback from the stakeholders, from our guests, and it also changes a little bit how they use the old trails versus how they're using the new trails. Some of the feedback we've received in the past is our users in the mountain bike world really wanted to see downhill specific mountain bike trails, and that's what we really focused on this last year, implementing in our bike park. And what we noticed is maybe some of the cross-country or multi-use trail users didn't necessarily agree with some of that. So we're adjusting our plan moving forward and seeing how we can get some cross-country trails and for both hikers and bikers up on the mountain.
That makes a great segue into my next question. You know, we've seen Ridge to Rivers just recently implement this pilot program on a handful of trails that involve some of those directional trails, some of those user schedules and whatnot. David, can you talk to us a little bit about what prompted that and what the reaction has been like since that's been implemented?
Yeah, what prompted it is just seeing the increase in use over the years, and it's something we've actually been trying to do for 3 years now. So through a variety of factors, most recently COVID, we weren't able to go out and get seek the public input that we wanted before doing anything like this. And we finally were able to do that this spring and reached out to the public just to say, acknowledge the fact that we're seeing the same thing you are. There's a real increase in use, and there are some strategies out there that are being used in other locations. Are we interested as a trail community here in Boise in trying some of those management strategies and seeing if we can mitigate some of the issues that come with increased use? And so, just really looking at that is what prompted it. Just the fact that we are seeing more and more people on the trails, and how do we manage that, and to be able to do a handful of pilot projects and see if people like it, see if they're successful, and then come back and look at it when it's done, and decide if we want to continue it or possibly modify it and continue it, or just discontinue it. But the opportunity to try these strategies, I think that's awesome that people are willing to at least explore it with us.
Sure. Well, and Carlos, a lot of these pilot program adjustments have to do with trying to create some harmony or some opportunities for mountain bikers and hikers. What have you heard in SWMBA, and what have you heard in the mountain biking community about the feedback there?
Well, it's been almost all positive feedback. What we've seen in other parts in the Mountain West, specifically Jefferson County outside of Denver, doing directional alternating use days on very busy trails has really mitigated a lot of user conflict. It's still very new. Ridge to Rivers just implemented this a little over a week ago, or a week ago today, David? I can't recall. Okay, so it's very, very fresh. People are just kind of having to change, figuring out which day they're allowed on a trail, which day they're not allowed on a trail. So I think that we're going to have perhaps a little bit of a transition period where there might be some user conflicts due to the new pilot program. But overall, I think the vast majority of people are really appreciative of being able to separate use on those trails. And I think this is going to be a real positive for our trail community, not just mountain bikers, but also hikers.
And Jamie, one of the trails up at Bogus around the mountain is a really popular mountain biking trail that's going to see some directional use. I know you guys already have some designated downhill trails that you mentioned. What are you anticipating, or I guess how do you sort of see this playing out? What are your hopes for this up at Bogus?
Yeah, I mean, we're changed.
Okay.
Oh, I'm back.
We lost you for a second, yeah.
I'm optimistic with the directional change to ATM. I would say, generally speaking, that's the direction that the majority of people use that trail. The way you access it is from our base area, and it sets you off in that direction. I'm sure we'll receive some feedback from people that like to hike it or bike it the other direction, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to see, how ATM fits within our bike park and the Ridges to Rivers Trail system as a directional trail. I think it's going to be a good adjustment for us up here.
Nicole,
sure, go ahead, David.
One of the questions you asked me was what kind of feedback we're getting from people, and I didn't respond to that. It's been really positive. It's been surprisingly positive. Anytime you're going to make a change to a trail that's been managed one way for many years, and you're saying, hey, let's try something new, you're going to get people who are upset about that. So we knew that going in. But we've had people, our volunteer rangers, our paid staff, on these trails, particular Lower Hulls and Polecat in the last week, a lot. And the feedback has been tremendously positive. You definitely have your detractors, and you always will. And we really just try to get them to say, hey, give it a chance. It's a pilot program, and give it a chance to see if it works and if you might like it. But so far, the feedback and the support has been really, really positive.
Great, that's awesome to hear. So I'll just head to my last question, and then we can start getting into some reader questions. What comes next in terms of expanding the trail system? I'll go to you first, David. What does Ridge to Rivers kind of see as the future for either adding trails or extending?
We have a few trails in the queue. The biggest challenge is on some of these is a lot of them lie on federal lands, and we have to go through the NEPA process before they can be approved, and that's slowed things down for some really cool trails that we hope to be able to add in the future. They were supported by the public in our 2016 trail plan, so we're hoping those will be approved in coming years. We do have a trail, the Hawkins Loop, that'll be we should be able to start construction on this fall and be completed sometime next summer. That's the city's Hawkins Reserve, about halfway up Boise Basin Road on the west side of the road, and also partly on BLM. We have a new trail that will go in probably the next 4 to 6 weeks called the Heroes Trail, and that will leave from the back of the Boise VA and go up to tie in with Elephant Rock. It's just a shorter connection, but one that a lot of people in that area were pretty excited to hear about. Cartwright Ridge is a trail that the city is going to be starting to manage. Land Trust of the Treasure Valley has been managing it for the last few years, and we will slowly take that on, probably fully by the end of the summer. So that's another opportunity that will show up on our maps, and we're going to be able to tie it in with a trail called Barn Owl that Cartwright Ranch has built, and that will create a much larger, mostly dirt loop that incorporates Peggy's and Chucker. So that'll be a really cool opportunity for people. So those are some of the near-term trail connections, and the ones that are a little further out, we're waiting for environmental clearance primarily with the Bureau of Land Management before we can move forward on them.
Sure. And Carlos, did you want to jump in on that? What would you like to see for the future of the trail system?
Well, actually, we're already starting to see that, Nicole. Outside of the Ridge to Rivers network, there's actually an expanding trail network within the Treasure Valley, specifically in Avamore, which is a planned community out on Highway 55. We are just about to open Pick Your Poison, which is, I know this term gets thrown around a lot, but it truly is a world-class downhill mountain bike trail. There are a number of trails that are being expanded out in Avamore. We will be, hopefully this year, breaking ground on an adaptive MTB friendly mountain bike trail that will actually be a perfect trail for people of all different fitness levels, ability levels, skill levels, and physical ability. This is something that we're desperately lacking within the Treasure Valley, is the ability for people who have physical impairments to be able to mountain bike on most of the trails. So we're expanding a lot outside of the Ridge to Rivers network. I'm sure that Jamie can talk about what Boise Basin is doing. They have done a tremendous job over the last couple of years, taking a lot of pressure off of our Foothills Trail network by building some fantastic trails up there. We're also seeing some potential trail expansion out in the Owyhees in the Wilson Creek area. So while we really want to be able to improve everybody's experience in the Foothills Trail network within Ridge to Rivers. There's also some areas outlying that we're trying to focus on building new trails, again, to take some of that pressure off.
Sure, that's fantastic. Yeah, and Jamie, let's go over to you. What are things looking like at Bogus?
Yeah, absolutely. As the mountain biking community knows, we had a quite a busy summer last year building out our Morningstar bike park. We built approximately 4 miles of downhill specific trails over there, from beginning trails to a jump line that opened right at the end of the year, which is quite a phenomenal trail for the high-end mountain bikers in town. As far as expansion goes, we're partnered with the U.S. Forest Service, and we have some trails planned on their land coming. We're in this kind of the same boat as Dave was talking about. We're waiting for some approvals for trails that are on the Forest Service land, as well as looking to expand north of our Morningstar bike park into an area that we call Bitterroot Basin, which is on our property, gives us a little bit more flexibility to build trails, as we can. And we are looking to expand into that area this year. So it'll expand our bike park, but it'll also add other opportunities for the multi-use trails to be connected into different areas of the mountain, and to just allow our users to spread out, both the downhill mountain bikers and horseback riders, trail runners, and cross-country cyclists. So we're excited about the expansions to come.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's a lot to look forward to, which is great. So let's start getting into some of the reader questions. We had folks submitting their questions for a couple weeks ahead of this event. Adam in Boise asked, are there any enforcement mechanisms to make sure people and their animals are treating trails with respect? David, do you want to kick us off with that one? Any enforcement plans?
Well, on city property, we have city employees that can go out, and they do go out and enforce leash restrictions, and also if a dog owner doesn't pick up after their pet. So they are limited to trails that are on city property in the reserves. Once you get further out, it's really an honor system. There is not a mechanism to enforce whether someone's dog is under control or whether they're picking up after their pet. So those are really focused on the lower trails and the trails that are really on city property.
Carlos, Jamie, do either of you have any thoughts on enforcement, or even outside of an organizational perspective, what we might be able to do to ensure that folks are being respectful of the trails?
So as far as SWMBA goes, we really have no ability to enforce closures ourselves, but we really do want to encourage our user group, and really for everybody who loves the trails, to police themselves and use positive peer pressure to make sure that people are respecting the trails. That's really our best tool that we have in our toolbox to be able to protect our trails.
Anything to add there, Jamie?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it takes everybody that's using the trails to be responsible for their own actions, and just education on the rules. I think with the amount of people that are moving to the area, some of it is that they just don't know, or they don't understand. So as Carlos said, educating, or that positive peer pressure, talking to your friends, talking to other trail users, and reminding them of what we need to do to protect our trails and respect the trail system, so we can continue to build and have this system that we do have. We're lucky to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of my favorite sayings has always been, it takes a community to manage a trail system. It's all of us as trail users to help everybody do the right thing.
Our next question is from Michael in Boise, and he asks, do single-use or one-direction trails work effectively in other cities, and why? So who would like to jump in first on that one?
I'm happy to. Yeah, they do work. They do work. They're it's proven. And I talk to a lot of other people that do jobs similar to mine. I'm a very avid mountain biker and travel all over on vacations and ride. And see it firsthand. But when you're able to build purpose-built single-use trails, you tend to pull a lot of your, in this, if I'm really thinking about purpose-built trails, most often anymore, those are for bikes. But you're pulling a lot of riders onto those trails, and that reduces the traffic on the adjacent trails. So when you build a cool purpose-built trail, especially in a key area where a lot of your users are, it really will take pressure off of the adjacent trails, and everybody that I've talked to, they see their problems decrease. And directional trails, the same thing. When you're on a directional trail, if everybody's going the same direction, you don't run into people as often. And I don't mean run into them physically, but encounter them. You have far less trail encounters, and it feels like a little more of a solitary experience. You don't have that surprise encounter when you're coming around a blind corner. And trails are narrow by design, and they're in the mountains and foothills, and going around corners, their limited visibility is inherent to a trail. So when you have directional trails, it helps with that flow and minimizing those negative encounters.
Absolutely. And Carlos, you mentioned Jefferson County, Colorado. If you want to speak to that a little more, and any other experience you have with these directional and single use.
Yeah, absolutely. So I lived in the Front Range of Colorado for several years. There's one particular trail system, Apex, which is just outside of Golden, Colorado, that saw actually about 5 times increase in trail usage in just a couple of years due to some perhaps overly enthusiastic marketing from the city of Golden. So starting in August of last year, Jefferson County Open Spaces started doing an alternating day usage, very similar to what Rich Rivers is doing on Halls Gulch, that allows for pedestrian traffic on even days and bike traffic on odd days. This has greatly decreased the number of physical altercations that were starting to crop up on Apex Trail. There were several fistfights that actually broke out, and far fewer complaints to Jefferson County Open Space because of user conflict. So that's a really, really great way for us to show, it's a proof of concept that this really works. We partnered with Ada County over at the Eagle Bike Park to make Junkyard Trail a directional trail back in October. It's also been a really great proof of concept. The small town of Fruita, Colorado, very close to the Utah state line, has had a number of their trails directional actually for about 5 years. And again, as David has said, when you have limited sight lines, especially when you have faster traffic, having everybody moving in the same direction really, really decreases the number of people that you encounter, and obviously reduces the trail conflict that you encounter because of that.
Sure thing. Jamie, anything to add there?
No, not specifically for a city, but for the mountain itself operating a bike business. It's imperative for safety concerns on the downhill specific trails that that we have those types of trails, and it greatly reduces user conflict and allows the folks that want to go downhill fast. It gives them an opportunity to ride there, and then those that want to ride cross country or hike or bike, it gives them another place to recreate in a safer manner.
Sure thing. And to insert my own question kind of tangentially here, we had a few questions that mentioned the trail schedules, that they have specific days for downhill mountain bikers, and some hikers who were concerned that there seems to be an emphasis on bikers. I know this pilot program also includes a pedestrian trail that's being built over by Bucktail. And so I'm curious, are we going to see more kind of single use or dedicated trails that are either pedestrian only, equestrian only, things that are dedicated to different user groups?
Well, we've already started seeing that. There's about 7 miles of trails in the Rich Rivers network that are foot traffic only. And Upper Halls Gulch is pedestrian only. So there already are single-use trails in our network. having a few mountain bike specific trails. And hopefully, I don't know if this is going to be able to happen within the Ridge to Rivers network, but definitely out at Avamore, we'll also have some equestrian specific trails. As David said earlier, it really is a great thing to have some specific use trails because it reduces trail pressure on the multi-use trail system. So as we increase our trail network, especially out to the western side of Ada County, I think that we really have some opportunities to increase our multi-use trails, but also increase our horse-only, bike-only, and hiker-only trails.
Anything else to add in there, David?
I would say that our goal is not to cut up the trail system and really be, these are hiker only, these are biker only. That's not, I hope we don't move forward in that way. But, depending on how the pilot program goes, there could be some additions in the future if that's what people want. I would like to see our program build some purpose-built bike trails. And that's another concept that was highly supported in our trail plan. And the reason I'd like to see that is because I really feel like that would allow us to do exactly what I mentioned earlier, to pull a lot of cyclists off of some of the busier nearby trails. I'm a firm believer in it. We have a bit of a challenge in that so much of the lower foothills is owned privately, and we've got to get permission from the private landowners. There's some key lands that where these trails would really work that are they're privately held, and right now we've had some success, but not all the success that we need to be able to design one of those a purpose-built trail that would actually have that kind of effect on the nearby system. And we would also again have to go through the environmental process, which would be the NEPA process with the BLM. So that's the beauty of Avamore. You can do things a lot quicker, man. Private land and Bogus Basin. Honestly, a lot of Bogus is owned by Bogus itself, and you can move forward a lot more quickly. And I'm thankful for both of those organizations and the opportunities they're providing, especially when it comes to those types of trails, because what we're not able to do here yet, at least they're providing those opportunities, and it's not far to get to either Avamore or up to Bogus.
Yeah, if I could jump in and add on to that, I think that David brings up a point that a lot of people either don't know or don't realize the extent of, and that is the amount of private land that Ridge to Rivers trails go through. Each of those private landowners has an easement agreement, basically a ability to use that land agreement with City of Boise. So every single contract has to be negotiated separately. So it is a very, very complex issue to try to get new trails built to access those private lands. We don't really have rights to private lands. Those are the private landowners that grant us permission to go through that. It's another reason why we as trail users absolutely have to be respectful, because at any point, those landowners could say, we don't really think it's worth it to allow people to pass through our private land, and they could shut down any number of trails. I think it's super, super important to remember that is a major, major challenge in our Boise foothills.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Carlos. Thank you. So our next reader question comes from Seth in Boise, and he asks, why are we not looking into more public input or creating a committee for our trails? So I guess to that, I'd say, is this something that we're talking about? Has this come up before, or how would we kind of bring more public input in? Anybody want to jump in first?
I'm happy.
I would love to. Go ahead, David.
We've used focused committees in the past. We probably will again at times. We get into different planning processes. It's been effective. We have our Ridge to Rivers partner agencies for us and in the lands that we're managing. And those are the Bureau of Land Management, the City of Boise, Ada County, Idaho Department of Fish and Game, and the U.S. Forest Service. So those agencies are really who I report to, all of them. But we have used committees in the past. I'm sure we will again. And then when we are looking at something like we've done this spring with the pilot programs, that's the reason that we went out so hard with 2 different surveys and we have them open for, the first one quite, I think 3 weeks. So just trying to get that public input, and so that we're not making decisions that are in a vacuum. But at the same time, we're looking for public input, and we want that in the end. We also want to make sure that the land managers are making decisions that are sound for the ground, what's on the ground, and that the resources being considered. So there's two sides to making those management decisions.
Sure, absolutely. Jamie, is there room for public input, or what is the public kind of comment possibility look like at Bogus?
Sure. For our current Trails master plan, we did in the process of developing that, deciding and listening to the public, we did a forum, a get together, and the feedback that we received was incorporated into the current master plan. A lot of that had to do with the community wanting downhill specific mountain biking, as well as expanded multi-use trails in the area. So those stakeholders, their feedback was incorporated into the current master plan. And I'm sure Dave and Carlos second this, but we get feedback all the time from folks, whether we're out, using the trails ourselves or whether it's emails in, and we, try to take that feedback and incorporate it into, our decisions moving forward. But yes, we've reached out. We've had times of public input for our current strategic trails plan.
Great. And Carlos, it looked like you wanted to jump in there too. What are your thoughts?
So I would love to see more of a collaborative governance happen within our Foothills Trail system. Right now, this is a partnership of 5 agencies, user groups. The stakeholders have no real input. We have no seat at the table. I think that would be very, very valuable information to give to the partnership. For example, we have a lot of trails that, as they're being improved, as water management can be put into trails, as realignments are done, there are features that could be added that would be really inconsequential to a hiker, but would be a fun additional feature for mountain bikers. That's not really the type of thing that we get to give input on. We have expertise that's not being tapped into. I would imagine that equestrians are probably in the same boat as far as being able to express their needs. Same things with trail runners and hikers. So until we have, even if it were an advisory committee, that would be better. But I'd really love to see more of a collaborative governance take place within the Boise Foothills.
Sure. Thank you. So our next question is from Sarah in Boise, and she asks, how are user expectations changing in the Valley? How do we preserve the wonderful access and outdoor recreation opportunities that we have? So I guess let's start, how are user expectations changing? We talked earlier about how much busier things are getting and how things are changing. So what do you guys think that trail users and folks in the Valley are starting to expect when they go out on trails? Anybody want to do it?
We have a lot of new trail users.
Sure.
So with new trail users, you have different expectations. We're seeing people that from different backgrounds, different locations coming in, and it's a kind of an educational effort of what is allowed in other places, what people do in other places may not be acceptable in Boise. Especially, the best example would be if you're from Western Washington, you're using your trails whether they're wet or dry, or you're never using them because they're often wet. If we move over here during the winter, we really, made great efforts to try to keep people off of them when they're muddy. Expectations among longtime trail users here, I think it's, they're just going further afield. There's some people are avoiding some of the more busier trails down low. They're looking at us to see what we can do to help, help mitigate some of the high traffic and some of the trails. People are using them at different times of day than they used to. So just really trying to work with the fact that the system is getting busier and busier.
Jamie or Carlos, either of you want to step in?
Yeah. So one thing that David said earlier that I think was really important was that it takes community to manage a trail system. So one of the expectations that we're seeing from longtime residents is that, kind of like what David was saying, is that they think that they can be out on the trail by themselves and have the peace and quiet and isolation that they perhaps had on our trails 20 years ago. That's just not feasible anymore with the massive increase, not only in population in the Treasure Valley, but over the last 14 months, the huge increase of trail users that we've seen. We need to start adjusting our expectations as trail users to be better community members. Rich Rivers has their Happy Trails pledge. A lot of other trail management groups have this type of idea, but really taking care of each other and our trail system in a community-minded way is really what should be our expectations. Not that we can just be by ourselves and do whatever it is that we like as individuals.
Sure thing. Anything to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I think that expectations on the mountain, like Carlos said, have changed quite a bit over the last even 5 or 6 years. I think that solitude and that getting away and using the trail system by yourself was an expectation. And there's still definitely some of that out there. If you time it right, like Dave was saying, using the trails at different times or different times of the year. But I think it's important, especially here at Boise Basin, our mission is accessibility to the Treasure Valley. And even if you've been here for a long time, that doesn't exclude the newcomer. So it's the expectations of, a quality experience in the mountains that's close to Boise. That is, we're trying to get everybody or as many folks as we can outside and enjoy outdoor recreation. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a shift. And as a trail manager here on the mountain, we're working towards trying to give a little bit of people's expectation to everybody, whether it's the downhill mountain bikers or the hikers, cross country trail riders. That's the challenge is to meet their expectations.
Absolutely. So our last reader question, and then we'll move on to some live questions that have come in while we're talking here. Our last question comes from Anne in Boise. She asks, what about dogs off leash? Their impact on the vegetation and wildlife is tremendous. Do you envision this changing to a requirement that they be leashed in the future to reduce impacts to the environment as well as the human visitors? Right. It's kind of a big question. David, what do you see? I know that there's already a mix of dog on leash and off leash trails, but what are you seeing?
There are places where their impact is significant and undeniable. The best example of that being Harrison Hollow in the Hillside to Hollow Reserve. It's a really, really popular place for folks to come with their dogs. And the vegetative alterations as a result of that are undeniable. I do think at some point in the future there will be some additional on-leash areas. I don't know what that's going to look like right now. Again, it will be probably something that's a classic example of a decision that will be made with probably a focused group of a variety of different trail users and trying to come up with a collaborative plan. But yeah, we're, again, with the increase in use, it's an increase in use with people with dogs as well. And I mean, you can see we've got braided trails, basically meaning like a little parallel pathway along many, many trails. And that's really been walked in by dogs. It's undeniable. And other places that almost, kind of look like they've been overgrazed, in my experience, by sheep or cattle, but it's not that. It's the fact that there's just so many off-leash dogs in it. So there are, I believe that's something that we are going to be looking at more closely in the next few years.
Absolutely. Jamie, what does that look like up at Boise Basin? What is your guys' kind of on-leash, off-leash mixture up there, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, for the multi-use trails, we're kind of in that tier in the Regis River system that the dogs are off leash, and that's okay. We don't see out on the trail system as much use, as many users with dogs as say, down in the Hollows Reserve. So we don't necessarily see the impact. Where we see it, kind of the potential challenges is in the downhill mountain biking area only. If somebody was, say, running with a dog and they ended up in that zone, or even cross country mountain biking with a dog and ended up in that zone, that's a potential safety risk for the dog and for other users. So it hasn't been a huge problem for us yet, but it's definitely something that we're aware of. And in our base area, it is a dog on leash area, but once they get out in the trails, it's a dog off leash area. But you need to manage your pet and make sure that they're not causing conflict out on the trails.
Sure. And Carlos, anything to add on that?
So we are having to see more on-leash regulations, especially places like the Eagle Bike Park, for the exact reasons that Jamie just talked about. We're talking about a potentially very dangerous situation if a dog off-leash runs onto a downhill mountain bike trail where a rider can be moving at 20, 25 miles an hour. That could lead to a serious injury or even death of the dog and the rider. So unfortunately, as the population of our valley has grown, as the number of dogs out on the trails has massively increased, we are just going to have to see a little bit more control being put into place.
Sure thing. Well, let's get into our live questions that have come in. We have one from user Jeff Like Bike on YouTube. He asks, is it possible to build a mid-mountain connector trail that would help keep mountain bikers up on the higher trails and provide more separation between hikers and bikers? Anyone want to jump in?
Is he speaking about, when I hear mid-mountain, I think Bogus Basin. Are we talking mid-foothills, or are we talking up at Bogus?
Mid-mountain, I would guess. Bogus, do you want to jump in, Jamie? Or I guess if you want to talk, David, about after Jamie goes to about what that would look like in the foothills.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Go ahead, Jamie.
Sure. I think that as far as a mid-mountain trail, I think it kind of exists on the mountain. So, and whether that's around the mountain trail connected to Brewer's Byway that kind of stays up above. We do have some plans for our Elk Meadows Trail and Face Trail to kind of encircle the entire mountain. If he was referring to that, there are plans in the future for that. Some of that land lies on Forest Service, so it's going to take a bit. So if he's referring to the mountain, yes, we have plans to in the future, but it's going to take us a bit.
Sure thing.
I guess he's probably talking about an upper foothills connector trail. And I think that, of course, David probably would be the expert on this matter. But as far as looking at maps, there is so much private land that you'd have to negotiate easements through in order to do, say, a mid to upper foothills traverse. It will take a long time, and it would take a considerable effort to work out all of those easement contracts.
David, what's your take on that?
What Carlos said. You're right. There's so the mid to upper elevation foothills, you're either on BLM, Forest Service, or private, and we are, as a best example, we've been. We're in year 3 of waiting for a final decision on a NEPA document that the BLM did to allow what we're calling the Curlew Connection, which would be a higher in the foothills trail. It would link Watchman Trail over to Trail 6 and Fat Tire. It would then allow a fairly nice lengthy higher traverse, but we're waiting. The decision was favorable by the BLM, but it was appealed. And we're waiting for the Washington office to decide on that appeal. And there's no end in sight as to when that might happen. I can tell you in the 18 years that I've been here, I've seen where when we proposed trails on federal land and they went through the NEPA process, and it was a pretty easy to sail through it. Anymore, it's not so easy. There's a lot of people out there that are concerned about other values in the foothills, and especially as they relate to wildlife. And I think that's a valuable concern, or I'm sorry, an important concern. We have a lot more people, we have more trails, and the wildlife is getting pushed around a lot more. Their habitat's getting more cut up. And so when I say we're waiting for this appeal to be worked out, as a land manager, I understand, and we'll live with whatever decision is made, but we do need to be conscious of the fact that there are other values out there that we need to consider. As much as I love trails and I'm a lifetime trail manager, there are other things we have to consider before we just are able to put in trails in a lot of locations. And as you get higher in the foothills, that becomes more important.
We've got another question here from Alicia Love Anderson on YouTube, and she says, Mayor Beater was a fan of slowing foothills development. From a purely observational perspective, I feel like I've seen more construction since Mayor McLean took charge. How can we preserve the land? Anybody want to jump in on foothills preservation?
Can I just jump in really quickly, because I know that David probably has a lot to say about this, but I think it's also really important to understand, especially if you're looking over on the east side of town, there's a lot of stuff over by Harris Ranch that's being developed in the foothills. And I know that a lot of people don't know this, but much of that land was purchased and development was approved more than 20 years ago. So it's not necessarily that there's a change. A lot of the stuff, a lot of permitting, a lot of development permits happen very slowly. Developers can purchase land and sit on it for a significant amount of time until property values increase to where their profit margin makes it worthwhile to build in those areas. So it's a complex thing.
Absolutely. David, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, to tear off what Carlos just said, a lot of the development really development doesn't happen quickly. The planning process takes years and years. And so what you're seeing right now actually was approved probably under the last mayoral administration. And so I'm not sure, that there's been an increase in foothills development with, if you're looking at the question that was posed under one mayor or the other. It's just these projects have been in the works for years, and some of them have come into fruition in the last 12 months, and they're building them out. And some of them are quite noticeable, especially on the east side of town.
Sure. Does anyone have any points to make as far as what folks can do, what trail users and residents can do to protect the foothills, or to get involved in preserving them?
I think being good citizens in terms of your own trail use. I think being an advocate and being a community advocate for increased open space, and if you're looking for increased trail opportunities and it's possible, being an advocate for that, but just really speaking up and being a citizen who's involved. If you want to see our foothills remain relatively unchanged, none of us can sit back and hope that it happens. You have to be someone who steps up and becomes involved.
Absolutely. We have a comment from Michael in Boise that says, many mountain bikers are disappointed in the counterclockwise direction chosen for polecat. That's part of that pilot program. Michael says, it's much more fun clockwise. My 11-year-old won't ride it with me now. He says it's boring. I guess that sort of goes to, the pilot program. What do you see coming out of this? I know it's supposed to be several months long, but with that feedback, how are you guys taking that into consideration, David, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, we've certainly heard that. I can tell you many love the way it's the way it's designated right now. So it's one of those things you knew you weren't going to make everybody happy. Absolutely. And that's the beauty of a pilot program. Maybe people in the end say, hey, I like everybody directional, but more of us prefer it the other direction. Hey, that's great. No big deal. We took a shot at it with counterclockwise, primarily because Polecat's kind of a beginner to lower intermediate loop, and counterclockwise is really the easier way to ride it. And that was kind of our strategy in choosing that. We are, is there a possibility of trying it clockwise partway through? Maybe. We're not sure. It would require a whole new set of signs purchased and maps and things. And so while we haven't ruled that out, I'm not sure that we'll do that. We might let it run the length of the pilot period. We are going to have a midway survey, and that's going to be a great chance for people to weigh in, and we want them to. And that could lead to some changes sooner than the end of the pilot program. And then we will again have a survey at the very end. So we totally understand. Didn't make everybody happy with that decision. I would encourage you to give it a chance and let the pilot program kind of run its course, and definitely participate in the upcoming surveys, and see if we can get the two compared and see if people prefer one or the other. I can tell you as a trail manager, it doesn't matter to me which direction it is. If people prefer one over the other, we're still going to achieve, by going directional on that loop, we would still achieve less interactions and less potential for conflict around the areas that have limited visibility.
Sure. We've got, what I think will probably be our last live question. It's from Scott, and he asks, are there plans for some of the newer trails being created to be less groomed, with more of the natural technical features left in, perhaps with alternate routes where appropriate? So Jamie, did you want to jump in on that one? This is Scott asking, are some of the newer trails, is there a potential for them to be a little bit more technical and not quite as groomed as some of the existing trails?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is expanding into our Bitterroot Basin, kind of north of our current bike park. That is a major consideration. The bike trails that we built last year were definitely more of the wider, quote, groomed trails. And so we're looking at implementing and building out some more technical trails on that side of the mountain. That's the plan, and we came to that with quite a bit of feedback from our mountain biking population. They'd really like to see more technical terrain, which we would love to give them. So yes,
sure.
Yeah, that's something that Jamie Brad Wilson, the director of Boise Basin, and I have been talking about as well. Is that over on that Bitterroot side of the mountain, there's so many opportunities for those more natural, less groomed trails. I do think it's important to understand that with the groomed trails that they put a lot of effort and money into building. There's a necessity to get people up there, and that just gives a very, very broad range of abilities that can ride those trails. So I think it was super important to build those groomed trails first. We do hope to work with Boise Basin to build some more natural, less groomed trails. There is an awful lot of that we are building out at Avamore as well. A lot more technical features, a lot more rock, a lot more rough and ready sort of trails. So while we have a lot of very, very groomed trails within the Boise Foothills, we're seeing more natural, rougher trails being built outside of the Rich Rivers network.
Carlos, you mentioned too the Wilson Creek area. Is that an area where we might see some more of those kind of natural features, or what are things looking like out there?
Oh yeah, Wilson Creek has some very, very rough trail tread. It's very rocky, very loose out there. It's really kind of an amazing area. It's a stark natural beauty. There is a fairly large herd of wild horses out there. It is a very heavily trafficked area for our equestrian friends. We're working very closely with them to try to manage user expectations, as we were talking about earlier, to make sure that neither group is pushing the other out. It's been it's truly been an amazing way that we've been able to collaborate. BLM out there in the Owyhees has been fantastic, working with us so that we can establish sort of a coalition of trail users to help manage that area and really help make it a place for horses and bikes to coexist. A lot of trail runners love that area too. So if you're looking for more rocky, loose, technical stuff, Wilson Creek's your place.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, I think we'll go ahead and start wrapping stuff up. I want to say thank you to David, Jamie, and Carlos for joining us today and helping us understand, what's next for Boise's trails. And thank you so much to our readers for tuning in, for sending in your questions. Those were fantastic. You can keep up with our outdoors coverage at idahostatesman.com/outdoors. I'm Nicole Blanchard, the Outdoors and Environment Reporter for the Idaho Statesman. In order to host conversations like these, in order to cover outdoor recreation opportunities and issues, we need support from our readers.